Hey y'all, it's Justin with Woods to Wall. Going to be doing another gear review for you guys today. Today I'm going to be reviewing my hunting arrow setup to the Easton 4mm FMJ. So I'm excited to share that with you guys today. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Alright guys, so here it is. This is the Easton 4mm FMJ. This is the 300 spine in the match grade option. The only difference that you're going to see between the match grade and the standard FMJ options in both the 5mm and the 4mm arrow setups is just going to be the straightness. In the match grade options, you're going to have the .001 or greater straightness. In the standard, in both the 4mm and the 5mm option, you're going to get that .002 plus or minus .002 straightness. So if you're just looking for a hunting arrow for hunting practical purposes, which most people are in this scenario, you're going to probably be okay with just getting the standard 4mm or 5mm FMJ arrow offered by Easton. Just because I don't believe that level of straightness you're going to see much of a difference in all practical hunting applications. I think for the price point and the difference in the price point between the match grade and the standard FMJ options, I think you're going to be fine with either one. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take you through how I have this arrow set up. I have a 100 grain field point or broadhead. Right now I have a field point in there. I have the 75 grain match grade, half steel, half aluminum, half out. I'm going to go in depth on this later. This is a 300 spine in the match grade option. I have the 2 3/4 AE hybrid, 3 fletch, and a right helical. Alright, so right off the bat, I wanted to go ahead and share with you guys just the #1 reason that I believe that this is the best hunting arrow on the market right now. And that is going to be the half out and the release of the match grade half out system from Easton new for 2024. I really believe this is going to be the difference maker for a lot of folks when looking for the best possible hunting arrow setup. I'm going to be diving into these in more detail later on in the video, so stay tuned for that. But I wanted to go ahead and reveal to you guys why this is the best hunting arrow on the market. Part of the reason that is because historically micro diameter arrows were only available in the deep 6 threaded option. The biggest advantage that it's going to give you is it allows you to go to that 832 thread option, which is the industry standard for most broadheads, and be able to use those broadheads in these micro diameter shafts. Really the biggest benefit of that is because you're going to have more availability when it comes to selecting that broadhead that works best for you, and most of those are threaded in that 832 thread pattern opposed to that deep 6. So for a lot of years these micro diameter shaft arrows, they were only available in that deep 6 thread pattern. Now these new half outs are now available in that 832 thread pattern, which allows you to get your hands on that broadhead that you desire to use for your hunting setup and be able to get those broadheads and get your hands on them whenever you need them. Like I said, I'm going to really dive into this half out system a little bit more later on in the video. So what is a FMJ arrow, what Easton calls their FMJ arrow? So basically that means full metal jacket, but what that is essentially it is a carbon core arrow with an aluminum jacket or shell wrapped around that carbon core that is permanently fused together. So what makes this arrow so much more beneficial than just a carbon arrow or an aluminum arrow? A lot of folks have moved away from an aluminum arrow, so most folks are either using a carbon shaft or one of these carbon aluminum hybrids. But for me, what this aluminum carbon hybrid arrow allows me to do is it allows me to get to my overall desired arrow weight without having to sacrifice my optimal, what I'm trying to achieve in my FOC or front of center percentage, because I don't want to have an extreme FOC. I'll get into a little bit more as to why I don't want some extreme FOC here in just a minute. But what this arrow allows me to do at 11.7 grains per inch in the 4mm option, it allows me to get to my overall arrow weight that I'm trying to achieve. With this arrow, it's sitting at about right at 526 grains. I'm shooting it out of an 80-pound draw weight, 28.5 inch draw length. So this, I'm trying to achieve that 525 grains and around about that area. And I have about a 13.5% FOC on this area. So for those that may not know what FOC is essentially just what percentage of weight is in the front half of the shaft of your arrow. So what Easton recommends in these arrows is between 10 to 15% FOC. I think once you hit that extreme FOC, which is that, somewhere between 15 to 30% FOC, what you're going to see at that point is you're going to get a little bit of drop off, and it's going to be a lot harder to maintain your accuracy, especially at longer distances. Now, if you're one of those guys that you're hunting out of a tree stand and you're looking at just taking those 20 to 30 yard shots consistently, that's going to probably be okay for you. You can get away with that extreme FOC, and you're definitely going to get a pass through. But if you're somebody that's looking at taking some longer distance shots with archery in a hunting application, I think once you get into that extreme FOC category, like I said, in that 15 to 30% range, I think you're going to see that the drop off that you're going to experience and the lack of speed that arrow is going to be able to maintain at some longer distances is not worth that extreme FOC. I'm shooting these arrows up to about 85 and 90 yards consistently, but that just shows that these arrows can be very accurate at that heavy weight and still having a decently high FOC. So again, when I'm calculating what I'm wanting my desired arrow weight to be in either FOC, my overall arrow weight in my hunting arrow setup, the reason that I'm doing that is I'm trying to calculate what my best probability of getting a pass-through potential at a desired range in a hunting application to get that clean and ethical kill, or the best chance of that clean and ethical kill of an animal. So let's talk about the difference between the 4mm and the 5mm options that Easton provides in the arrows shafts in the FMJ models. The only difference that you're going to see between the 4mm and the 5mm shafts, other than the obvious 1mm difference in diameter, is just going to be the grains per inch. The 5mm option is 12 grains per inch in the 300 spine, and the 4mm option is going to be 11.7 grains per inch. In my opinion, you're not going to see much difference in wind drift or anything like that. A 4mm and a 5mm, they're both going to be a micro diameter shaft arrow, and I think you're going to get very similar results out of both of them. The only difference in what might be best for you is going to be the weight. So in this 4mm, my arrow is cut to 28 inches. If I would have elected to go with the 5mm shaft opposed to the 4mm shaft, it would have added an additional 8 grains to the overall weight of my arrow, which in turn would have reduced my FOC just a little bit lower than what I'm trying to obtain. So depending on the length of your arrow, depending on what your draw length is and what you need those arrows to be cut at, that may determine for you whether you need to get the 4mm or the 5mm arrow option in these FMJ arrows, because I really do not believe that the difference between a 4mm and a 5mm as far as micro diameter shafts go are going to make a big difference in flight, are going to make a big difference in penetration. I think between the 4mm and the 5mm options, you're still going to get whatever benefits that you're going to seek to get out of a micro diameter shaft arrow. There's an argument within the archery community as to whether a micro diameter shaft is going to gain more penetration than other arrows. I personally believe that most of your overall penetration or your pass-through potential is not going to necessarily come from the diameter of the shaft as much as it is your broadhead choice, the accuracy of the shot, and the speed of your arrow, and things of that nature. I do believe as this arrow passes through an animal, being that this half-out system sits a little bit outside of the actual shaft of the arrow, very minuscule, maybe a 32nd or a 16th of an inch on each side or around the circumference of the arrow. As that arrow is passing through, what tissue is not being caught by your broadhead, whether it be a fixed blade or mechanical, I do believe that this half-out system, being that it sets outside the diameter, the normal diameter of the shaft of the arrow, it's going to keep, at least off the front half, a lot of that tissue friction as it passes through the animal. And that may just be my own personal belief and the way my mind thinks as far as penetration goes. What I will say that I believe, and please feel free to comment and tell me what you think. That this half out system does is that it absolutely deflects and creates good aerodynamics for this arrow shaft. And what it's going to do is, you can see here again how I just explained, this half out system sits probably about a 32nd of an inch outside the rest of the diameter of the arrow shaft. Therefore, it's going to take a lot of that friction right here and reduce the friction along the rest of the arrow shaft as it's traveling through the air. You can see here in this carbon arrow setup where my broadhead and my insert is flush with the shaft of the arrow. Your entire arrow is catching that wind friction as it's going through its flight path in the air. With this half out system, a lot of that friction is going to be caught and deflected right here in this half out system away from the shaft of the arrow, allowing that arrow to maintain its speed and optimal accuracy during its flight path. So also with these half outs, one of the benefits is the options that Easton is offering with this half out system. The half outs that I'm running on this 4mm FMJ arrow is the half steel, half aluminum, 75 grain half out. That is what worked best for me, for again that FOC that I'm trying to achieve, along with the overall arrow weight. The 75 grain half steel, half aluminum. It also gave me a little bit more strength in the front end of that shaft, with that steel being at the bottom of that half out. So they also have the multiple options with these half out, which is also going to be a benefit if you decide to go with a 4mm or a 5mm FMJ Easton arrow. The different options that they are offering in these match grade half out systems is going to allow just about everybody to obtain that FOC and overall arrow weight that they're trying to achieve. So if you buy a pack of these arrows, the standard half out system that it's going to come with is an all aluminum 55 grain half out system. They also offer a 100 grain titanium and steel option in the match grade half outs, but that's going to be what best suits you. But for me, the half steel, half aluminum, 75 grain match grade half out is what suited me best. So what are some of the overall benefits of a micro diameter shaft arrow, what the industry calls a micro diameter shaft? In 4mm here, this is absolutely what would be considered a micro diameter shaft. So some of those benefits are going to be, number one, it's going to minimize your wind drift. So obviously a micro diameter arrow is going to have less wind drift, and for obvious reasons. So there's going to be less surface area when this arrow is moving through the air for directional wind changes or wind in general, to be able to catch this arrow as it's moving through the air and change its flight path. When that's going to really come into play, again, using that same example earlier, if you're hunting deep wooded areas and you're hunting from a tree stand taking 10, 15, 20, 30 yard shots, wind drift may not play as big as a factor, opposed to in a spot and stalk scenario, or some, if you're hunting out west and some other applications where you're going to be taking some 60, 70, 80 yard shots, and there's a good likelihood of having some heavier winds as you're needing to take a precision shot on an animal, the micro diameter shaft is definitely going to be a benefit to have in those scenarios. So if we're talking about potential disadvantages of this arrow, the only disadvantage that I have found so far, and I've been shooting these arrows for about 4 months now, so not really a long period of time, because I have always shot just a straight carbon shaft arrow, but the only disadvantage that I have found, really it's not even a disadvantage, it's a potential disadvantage for me at this point, would be the durability and the potential for damage that these can incur compared to a carbon shaft arrow. The disadvantage is that once you bend or damage the aluminum outer shell of this arrow, the entire arrow is shot and it's done. So if you're shooting a carbon arrow, typically they can be maybe just a little bit more durable, and where this is really going to come into an application is when you're just shooting a lot of arrows and getting a lot of repetition in practice. And so a lot of times when you're doing that, you're trying to make a tight group, you're going to either nick or hit another one of your arrows. And typically with aluminum shaft arrows, I've heard a lot of people say that they're just not as durable and that they bend or break. These FMJ arrows are absolutely not showing that issue whatsoever so far. So I've actually, in shooting these, seen about the opposite effect as to where I've shot carbon shaft arrows in the past while target shooting or practicing. When I've nicked one of those arrows, a lot of time I've seen more damage on those carbon arrows, or actually split the arrow a lot quicker. And I've yet to do that with these FMJ arrows. A lot of times where I've actually either heard or seen the arrow nick another arrow, it seems to actually just deflect off of it. If you do notice any kind of damage, you need to be checking your arrows and spinning your arrows and making sure there is no damage. When shooting these arrows so far, when I have nicked them or anything like that, I've not been able to see any damage incurred to the arrow whatsoever. So, and on that note, talking about target practice and practicing in general, when I got a set of these arrows and I shot them out of my new archery setup, and you can go back, I did a full review on the Hoyt RX-8 that I'm shooting these arrows out of. Feel free to check that one out as well. But when I first started shooting this setup, I had to actually go purchase a crossbow rated archery target just to stop these micro diameter arrows. I think this thing is just tuned to a T, and it is obtaining maximum penetration. I think just that in and of itself speaks volumes to what these arrows are capable of. And that was just proof right there for me that all I needed to see was that I could not get a standard compound bow, brand new out of the box archery target to stop this arrow. I had to go get an archery target that was rated for crossbows up to 600 feet per second just to stop this arrow. So just to wrap things up, everything we've just discussed is why I believe these Easton FMJ micro diameter shaft arrows are the best hunting arrow that somebody can buy on the market today. Having the micro diameter shaft, the added strength of the aluminum jacket with that carbon core, but really the selling point is that paired with this half-out system that's being offered by Easton. To me, it makes these arrows a no-brainer, and I'm only sharing what is working for me. What I encourage everybody to do is, I'm not a professional, I don't know everything there is to know, and I'm still learning. I encourage everybody to try out different things within your budget and see what works best for you. This archery setup is what works best for me, no questions asked. This is the best archery setup I've ever had, and I will definitely be using an Easton FMJ micro diameter arrow from here moving forward, and until something else comes out better, this right here is the best there is. But I would love to hear what you guys think, so comment below, share what experiences you guys have with your arrow setup. If you have a setup that works better for you, let me know. I'd love to know what it is. We just really appreciate you guys watching, and tell us what you guys want to see next time. So till then, thank you guys for watching.